The morning bell rang across the Galactic Academy. It was not really a bell. It was a sound that traveled through walls and floors and even through the bodies of every student. The sound told them to wake up, to get ready, to move. Opened her eyes. She was already awake. She had been awake for an hour, sitting on her bed, looking out the window at the 3 moons of this strange world. Back on Earth, there was only 1 moon. She missed it sometimes. Her room was small but clean. The academy gave every student the same room. 4 walls, 1 bed, 1 desk, 1 window. Simple, liked simple things. She stood up and stretched her body. Her muscles were tight from yesterday's training. The academy made all students do physical work, but it was easy. On Earth, she had carried water from the river every day. She had climbed mountains. She had run from wild animals. This academy training was like a vacation. She put on her uniform. It was gray and loose. All students wore the same thing. The academy said it made everyone equal, but knew that nothing could make her equal to the others. She was the only human here, the only one from Earth, the only one from That was what the galaxy called her home planet, a world where everything wanted to kill you. The weather could kill you. The animals could kill you. The plants could kill you. Even the water could kill you if you drank from the wrong place. Humans had lived on Earth for thousands of years. They had survived everything. And now was here at the best academy in the galaxy as the first human student. She walked to the food hall. Other students were already there. They came from many different worlds. Some had blue skin. Some had 4 arms. Some had no arms at all and moved things with their minds. They all looked at when she entered. Some looked curious. Some looked afraid. Some looked disgusted. Did not care. She had stopped caring about their looks a long time ago. She took her food and sat alone at a corner table. The food was strange. It was some kind of paste that changed flavor based on what nutrients your body needed. Today it tasted like fish. Missed real food. She missed rice and soup and grilled meat, but she ate the paste without complaint. As she ate, she noticed something in her meal tray. A bone. A small bone from some animal that had been processed into the paste. Most students would throw it away. Most students would not even notice it, but picked it up and looked at it carefully. It was about the length of her finger, hard and white, clean. She put it in her pocket. After breakfast, all students went to the main hall. Today was a special day. Instructor Vel had said so yesterday. She had told them to be ready for something important. Instructor Vel was tall and thin. She had silver skin and eyes that changed color based on her mood. Right now, her eyes were bright yellow. That meant she was excited. She stood at the front of the hall. Behind her was a large table covered with a cloth. The students sat in rows, waiting. "Good morning," Instructor Vel said. Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the room. "Today, we begin the annual trial." A murmur went through the students. The trial was famous. It was one of the oldest tests at the academy. Every student had to make a blade, a weapon, and the best blade would bring great honor to its maker. "The rules are simple," Instructor Vel continued. "You have 7 days. You must create a blade using any method you choose. You may use the Academy's forges, materials, and tools. At the end of 7 days, your blade will be tested. The blade that performs best will win." She pulled the cloth from the table. Underneath were hundreds of items, metals of every color, crystals that glowed with inner light, containers of plasma and energy, tools that had never seen before. "These are your materials," Instructor Vel said. "Take what you need. Begin when you are ready." The students rushed forward. They pushed and grabbed. They argued over the best metals and the rarest crystals, stayed in her seat. She watched them fight over shiny things like children fighting over toys. A student named walked past her. He had green scales and sharp teeth. He was carrying a large piece of silver metal that seemed to float in his hands. "Not going to take anything, human?" he asked. His voice was mocking. "Oh, I forgot. Your kind probably does not know how to forge. You still live in caves, yes." Some students nearby laughed. Looked at calmly. "We do not live in caves anymore," she said. "We stopped doing that about 10,000 years ago." Laughed louder. 10,000 years, so recent. My people stopped living in caves 1,000,000 years ago. You are like Bobby's." He walked away, still laughing. His friends followed him. Reached into her pocket. She felt the small bone she had saved from breakfast. It was smooth and cool against her fingers. Another student approached her. Her name was Tal. She had pale purple skin and large dark eyes. She was one of the few students who did not treat badly. "Are you not going to get materials?" Tal asked. She was carrying a small box of glowing crystals. "The good ones are almost gone." Shook her head. "I have what I need." Tal looked confused. "You have what you need, but you did not take anything from the table." Just smiled. She did not explain. She did not need to explain. That night sat in her room. She took out the bone and placed it on her desk. She looked at it for a long time. Then she reached under her bed and pulled out a bag she had brought from Earth. Inside the bag were more bones. She had been collecting them for weeks. Every time her food had a bone in it, she saved it. Every time she found a bone on the ground, she kept it. She had 23 bones now. Different sizes, different shapes, but all of them were strong. She picked up the largest one. It was from her first week at the academy, a leg bone from some large animal. It was thick and heavy, good for a handle. She held it up to the light. She could see the structure inside it, millions of tiny holes that made it light but strong. Bones were amazing things. They were harder than most metals but weighed almost nothing. They could bend without breaking. They could heal themselves if they cracked. Humans had used bones as weapons for a very long time, before metal, before fire, before language. The first human weapons were bones and stones, simple things that kept her ancestors alive. Smiled to herself. Her classmates thought she was primitive. They thought she was backward and stupid. They did not understand that primitive did not mean weak. Primitive meant tested. Primitive meant proven. Primitive meant thousands of generations of survival. She began to work. She had no forge. She had no fancy tools. She had only her hands and her knowledge and her patience. That was enough. It had always been enough. Outside her window, the 3 moons rose slowly into the sky. Somewhere in the academy, other students were melting metal and shaping plasma, and using machines that cost more than entire cities on Earth. And in her small room, sat alone, holding a bone, and remembering everything her grandmother had taught her about survival. The trial had begun. The second day of the trial began with loud noises from the forge room. Metal screamed as it melted. Machines hummed with power. Energy crackled through the air like small storms. Walked past the forge room on her way to the garden. She looked inside. Dozens of students stood at their stations, surrounded by heat and light. Was there, his green scales shining with sweat. He was pouring liquid silver into a mold shaped like a long curved blade. His friends stood around him, watching with admiration. "Look at that color," one of them said. "Pure silver from the moons of the strongest metal in 3-star systems." Smiled proudly. "When I finish, this blade will cut through anything. Stone, metal, bone, nothing will stop it." He noticed watching from the door. His smile became cruel. "Human, come see what a real blade looks like. Maybe you can learn something." Said nothing. She simply walked away toward the garden. The academy garden was a peaceful place. Plants from 100 worlds grew there, carefully tended by robots and students who studied life sciences. Came here every day. Not to study, not to relax. She came here to find stones. She knelt beside a small stream and searched the ground. Most stones were too soft, some were too round. But after an hour of looking, she found what she needed. A flat gray stone with a rough surface, perfect for sharpening. She put the stone in her bag and walked back to her room. On the way, she passed a group of students sitting in the common area. They were talking loudly about their blades. "I am using plasma-forged titanium," one said. "My father sent it from our home world. It costs more than a small ship." "That is nothing," another replied. "I am making my blade from compressed light. It will weigh nothing but cut through steel." They saw and stopped talking. Then one of them, a female with blue feathers covering her head, spoke up. "What about you, human? What are you using for your blade?" Hesitated, she could lie, she could say nothing, but she decided to tell the truth. "Bone," she said. Silence, then laughter. Loud, mean laughter that echoed through the common area. "Bone," the feathered student repeated. "You are making a blade from bone, like an animal." "Worse than an animal," another student added. "Animals at least use their teeth and claws. She is using dead body parts." More laughter. Stood still and let them laugh. Her face showed nothing. Inside, she felt a small fire burning, but she kept it hidden. She had learned long ago that anger was a weapon. You did not use a weapon until the right moment. "Let her be," a quiet voice said. Everyone turned. It was Tal, the student with purple skin. She stood near the window holding a book. "She is just going to embarrass herself," the feathered student said. "Let us have our fun." "Your fun is cruel," Tal said, "and cruel people often find that life is cruel back to them." The feathered student made an angry sound but said nothing more. Slowly, the group broke apart. The laughter faded, nodded once at Tal, then continued to her room. Inside her room, closed the door and sat on her bed. She took out her collection of bones and spread them on the desk. 23 bones. Tomorrow she would need more. She picked up the largest bone and examined it closely. It was clean and white. She had boiled it in water from the bathroom sink to remove any remaining meat or fat. Now it was pure bone, ready to be shaped. She took out the gray stone from the garden. She held the bone in one hand and began to scrape the stone along its surface. The sound was soft and steady. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Small pieces of bone fell away like white dust. This was how her grandmother had taught her, not with machines, not with forges, with hands and stones and time. Her grandmother had lived in a small village in the mountains of Korea. There were no factories there, no technology, just old ways passed down through generations. "The bone knows what it wants to be," her grandmother had said. "Your job is to listen." Listened. She felt the bone in her hands. She felt where it was thick and where it was thin. She felt the grain of it, the natural lines that ran through its structure. Slowly, she began to see the shape hidden inside. She worked for hours. Her hands became tired. Her fingers became sore, but she did not stop. On Earth, stopping meant death. A half-finished tool was useless. A half-built shelter would not protect you. You finished what you started or you died. By midnight, the bone had changed. It was no longer round and thick. It was flat and long with a rough edge that would become sharp. It looked like nothing yet, just a piece of bone that someone had scraped, but could see what it would become. She put down the stone and stretched her hands. Her muscles ached. Her eyes were heavy, but she felt good. She felt alive in a way that forge work could never make her feel. Someone knocked on her door. Opened it. Tal stood outside, holding 2 cups of something warm. "I thought you might be thirsty," Tal said. "You missed dinner." Realized she had not eaten since morning. She took one of the cups and let Tal inside. Tal looked at the desk. She saw the bones, the stone, the white dust covering everything. Her large, dark eyes grew larger. "You are really doing it," she said. "You are really making a blade from bone." "Yes," said. She sipped the warm drink. It tasted like flowers and honey. "Why?" Tal asked. "The Academy has the best materials in the galaxy, metals that never break, crystals that hold energy forever. Why would you choose bone?" Thought about the question. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about Earth and all the humans who had lived and died there. She thought about what it meant to survive. "On my world," said slowly, "we did not always have metal. For a very long time we had nothing but what we could find: stones, wood, bones. And with those simple things we built everything. We built tools and weapons and homes and cities. We went from caves to stars using nothing but what the world gave us." She picked up the half-shaped bone. "This is not just a blade. This is a reminder of who I am and where I come from. A reminder that my people did not survive because we had the best materials. We survived because we refused to die." Tal was quiet for a long moment, then she nodded slowly. "I think I understand," she said, "at least a little." She finished her drink and stood up to leave. At the door, she turned back. "The others think you will fail," she said. "They think you are foolish and primitive." "I know," said. "What do you think?" Looked at the bone in her hand. She thought about the days of work ahead, the scraping and shaping and sharpening, the doubt and the mockery and the loneliness. "I think," she said, "that they do not know what primitive means." Tal smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "Good luck, human," she said, and then she was gone. Closed the door and went back to her desk. She picked up the stone and began to scrape again. Outside, the 3 moons moved slowly across the sky. Inside, a girl from Earth made a weapon the old way, the hard way, the human way. The mockery would continue tomorrow. The laughter would get louder, but did not mind. She had survived worse things than laughter, much worse things. She scraped the bone and smiled in the darkness. The days passed slowly. Each morning woke before the bell. Each night she worked until her eyes could barely stay open. Her fingers became rough and hard from scraping. Her palms grew thick with calluses, but the blade was taking shape. On the 3rd day she finished the rough form. The bone was now flat and long, about the length of her forearm. One end was thick for a handle, the other end tapered to a point. It did not look like much, just a white stick with a pointy end, but knew that the real work was just beginning. She needed fire. The academy did not allow open flames in student rooms. It was too dangerous, they said, too primitive, but had learned something important during her first month at the academy. The bathrooms had heat vents that blew hot air to dry students after washing, very hot air. She took her blade to the bathroom late at night when no one else was around. She held the bone over the heat vent and waited. The air was not as hot as real fire, but it was enough. Slowly, the bone began to change. The white color turned slightly yellow. The surface became harder, smoother. Heat treatment, her grandmother had called it cooking the bone. It drove out the last of the moisture and made the bone stronger. On Earth, they would use fire pits. Here, used a bathroom vent. Different tools, same result. She held the bone over the heat for 3 hours. Her arms grew tired. Her shoulders burned with pain. But she did not stop. She thought about her grandmother standing over a fire, teaching a young how to make her first bone needle. The old woman's hands had been steady and sure, tried to be the same. When she finished, the bone was transformed. It was harder now, almost like stone. She tapped it against the bathroom wall and heard a solid sound like wood hitting wood. Good, very good. The next step was shaping the edge. Back in her room, took out her collection of stones. She had found several more during her walks in the garden. Different stones for different purposes. A rough gray stone for removing material. A smooth black stone for sharpening. A flat red stone for polishing. She started with the gray stone. She held the blade at an angle and drew the stone along the edge, again and again. Each stroke removed a tiny amount of bone. Each stroke brought the edge closer to sharpness. This was the hardest part, not because it was difficult but because it was slow. A plasma forge could create a sharp edge in seconds. A laser cutter could do it even faster, but had only stones and hands and patience. She thought about her ancestors as she worked, the first humans who had made tools. They had no knowledge, no teachers, no books. They had only their hands and their need to survive. They had learned by trying and failing and trying again. They had passed their knowledge to their children, who passed it to their children, who passed it to their children. An unbroken chain of survival stretching back millions of years. Was part of that chain. Every stroke of the stone connected her to every human who had ever lived. She was not just making a blade. She was continuing a tradition older than civilization itself. On the fourth day, Tal came to visit. "I wanted to see how you were doing," she said. Let her in. The room was covered in white bone dust. It was in the air, on the floor, on the bed. It was in her hair and on her clothes. She looked like a ghost. Tal's large eyes went wide. "You have been working very hard." "Yes," said. She held up the blade. It was starting to look like a real weapon now. The edge was thin and straight. The point was sharp enough to pierce skin. The handle was wrapped in strips of cloth torn from spare uniform. Tal reached out to touch it, then stopped. "May I?" Handed her the blade. Tal held it carefully, turning it in the light. "It is beautiful," Tal said softly, "in a simple way." "Simple is good," said. "Simple things do not break easily." Tal gave the blade back. "The others are almost finished. His blade is complete. He has been showing it to everyone. It is very impressive. Silver and gold with energy lines running through the metal." "I am sure it is," said. "Are you not worried? The trial ends in 3 days." Looked at her blade. It was not finished yet. The edge needed more sharpening. The handle needed more wrapping. There were small cracks she had to fill with paste made from more bone dust mixed with water. "I will be ready," she said. "How can you be sure?" Smiled. "Because I have no choice. On Earth we have a saying, the work gets done because it must get done. There is no other option." Tal nodded slowly. She did not fully understand, but she respected the answer. That night worked until dawn. She sharpened the edge until it could split a hair. She filled every crack with bone paste and smoothed it flat. She wrapped the handle tightly, then wrapped it again. She held the blade up to the light and looked for any flaw, any weakness, any imperfection. There were many. The blade was not perfect, it would never be perfect, but it was strong, it was sharp, it was real. On the 5th day, she began the final treatment. She went to the food hall and asked for animal fat. The cook, a round alien with 6 arms, looked at her strangely. "Fat? Why would you want fat?" "For my project," said. "Please." The cook shrugged and gave her a small container of yellowish grease. Back in her room, warmed the fat over the bathroom vent until it became liquid. Then she rubbed it into the bone blade, covering every surface. The fat would protect the bone from moisture and make it stronger. It would also make the blade slightly flexible, able to bend without breaking. She rubbed the fat in with her bare hands. The grease went under her fingernails and into the cracks of her skin. It smelled bad like old meat, but did not mind. This was how it was done. This was how it had always been done. By the 6th day, the blade was complete. Held it in her hands and felt its weight, light but solid. The edge gleamed in the pale light from her window. The handle fit perfectly in her grip, shaped by her own hands for her own hands. She swung it through the air. It made a soft whistling sound. She thrust it forward. She slashed it sideways. The blade moved like an extension of her arm. It was not beautiful like silver sword. It was not impressive like the plasma blades and energy weapons her classmates had made. It was plain and simple and rough around the edges. But it was hers. She had made it with nothing but bones and stones and determination. She had made it the way humans had made weapons for 1,000,000 years. And tomorrow, she would show everyone what that meant. She put the blade under her pillow and lay down to sleep. Outside, the 3 moons shone bright and full. Inside, a girl from Earth dreamed of her grandmother's hands, steady and sure, working by firelight in a mountain village on a world called home. Tomorrow was the trial. Tomorrow they would see. The 7th day arrived. walked into the testing hall carrying her blade wrapped in cloth. She was early. Only a few students were there, setting up their weapons on display stands. They looked at her and whispered to each other. She ignored them. The testing hall was large and round, with seats rising up the walls like a bowl. In the center was a flat arena made of black stone. At one end of the arena stood 5 targets. They were not ordinary targets. They were combat dummies made from the hardest materials in the galaxy. The first target was made of compressed steel. The second was made of synthetic diamond. The third was made of energy-resistant polymer. The fourth was made of living crystal that could heal itself. The fifth was a full combat robot programmed to fight back. Each blade would be tested against all 5 targets. Points were given for cutting depth, clean strikes, and how much damage the blade could do without breaking. The blade with the highest total score would win. Students continued to arrive. The hall filled with noise and excitement. Everyone wanted to see who would win. Everyone wanted to see who would fail. Arrived surrounded by his friends. He carried his silver sword openly, letting everyone see it. The blade was beautiful. It shone like water in sunlight. Energy lines ran through the metal, glowing blue and gold. The handle was decorated with precious stones. He saw and walked toward her. "Let me see your blade, human," he said. "I want to laugh one more time before I win." Unwrapped her blade and held it up. The students nearby fell silent. Then the laughter started. It spread through the hall like a wave, laughed loudest of all. "A bone," he said. "You spent 7 days making a bone. I could find better weapons in garbage." "It is not just a bone," said calmly. "It is a blade." "It is a joke," replied. "You are a joke. Your whole species is a joke." He walked away, still laughing. His friends followed, making more insults, wrapped her blade again and waited. Instructor Vel entered the hall. Her silver skin gleamed under the lights. Her eyes were bright orange today. That meant she was serious. "Welcome to the trial," she said. Her voice filled the hall without shouting. "You have all worked hard. Now we will see what you have made. Remember, we are not testing beauty. We are testing strength, sharpness, and durability. The best blade is not the prettiest blade. It is the blade that does its job." She called the first student forward, a tall alien with gray skin and 4 arms. He carried a blade made from frozen plasma contained in a magnetic field. It looked like solid lightning. He approached the first target, the compressed steel. He swung his blade. The plasma edge cut deep into the steel, leaving a glowing wound. The crowd cheered. He moved to the second target, the synthetic diamond. He swung again. This time the blade cut less deep. Diamond was harder than steel, but it still made a mark. The third target, the polymer, resisted the blade more. The cut was shallow. The fourth target, the living crystal, healed almost as fast as he cut. The fifth target, the combat robot, it moved and dodged. The student swung and missed, swung and hit, swung and missed again. Finally, he landed a solid blow. The robot fell. Good scores, not great but good. Student after student took their turn. Some blades performed well. Some broke against the harder targets. One blade exploded when it hit the living crystal, sending shards across the arena. No one was hurt, but the student who made it ran from the hall in shame. Then stepped forward. The crowd grew quiet. Everyone knew his blade was special. Everyone wanted to see it in action. Smiled and raised his silver sword. The energy lines glowed brighter. He approached the first target with confidence. He swung. The blade cut through the compressed steel like it was paper. The crowd gasped. Second target, the synthetic diamond, he swung. The blade cut deep, deeper than any blade before. Third target, the polymer split apart. Fourth target, the living crystal, swung with all his strength. The blade cut through and the crystal could not heal fast enough. Fifth target, the combat robot. It came at him fast, was not a fighter, but his blade was so sharp that it did not matter. One swing, two swings, three swings. The robot collapsed in pieces. The crowd exploded with cheers, raised his sword in victory. His friends chanted his name. Instructor Vel recorded his score. It was the highest of the day, the highest in years. "Is there anyone else?" she asked. Stood up. The hall went quiet again, but this time the quiet was different. This time people were ready to laugh. Walked to the arena. She unwrapped her blade. The white bone looked small and sad under the bright lights. Someone in the crowd made a sound like a sick animal. "Whenever you are ready," Instructor Vel said. Her voice was neutral, but her eyes had turned light blue. Curiosity. Approached the first target. Compressed steel. The hardest metal commonly used in starship construction. Every other blade had struggled against it except. She took a breath. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about Earth. She thought about every human who had ever held a bone and faced something bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than themselves. She swung. The blade hit the steel. It did not bounce. It did not break. It sank into the metal and stuck there. She pulled it out. The cut was clean and deep, not as deep as blade, but deep enough. The crowd murmured in surprise. Second target, synthetic diamond, the hardest natural material known, swung. The bone edge met the diamond's surface. There was a cracking sound. Everyone thought the blade had broken, but when pulled back, the blade was whole. It was the diamond that had cracked. A thin line ran through its surface. The murmurs grew louder. Third target, polymer, swung, clean cut. Fourth target, living crystal. She swung. The crystal tried to heal, but the bone blade had left something behind. Tiny fragments of bone stuck in the wound, blocking the healing. The cut stayed open. The crowd was no longer murmuring. They were shouting. Fifth target, the combat robot. It activated and came at her fast, faster than it had moved against anyone else. Maybe it sensed something different about her. Maybe it knew she was dangerous. Did not run. She did not dodge. She waited until the robot was close, then moved like water flowing around a stone. The robot's arm passed over her head. Her blade came up. It found the gap between the robot's chest plates. It went in and did not stop. The robot froze. Sparks flew from its chest. It fell backward with a crash that shook the floor. Stood over it, breathing hard. Her bone blade was still in her hand, whole, unbroken, covered in oil that looked like blood. The hall was completely silent. Instructor Vel's eyes had turned pure white, wonder. "Well," she said softly, "that was unexpected." Walked back to her seat. She did not look at anyone. She sat down and wrapped her blade again. The trial was over. Now they would count the scores. Instructor Vel stood at the center of the arena. The students were quiet now, waiting. The scores had been counted 3 times because no one could believe them. "The results are final," Instructor Vel announced. In third place with a score of 87 points, student. His face went pale. Third place. His beautiful silver sword, made from the most expensive materials in 3 star systems, had come in third place. In second place, with a score of 91 points, student Bora. Bora was a quiet student with orange skin who had made a blade from compressed starlight. She nodded calmly at the announcement. And in first place, Instructor Vel continued, with a score of 94 points. She paused. The hall held its breath. "Student!" Chaos erupted. Students shouted in disbelief. Some cheered, some argued, jumped to his feet, his scales turning dark with anger. "Impossible," he yelled. "She used bone, just bone. How can bone beat metal? How can primitive beat advanced?" Instructor Vel raised her hand. The shouting slowly died down. "Come here," she said. Stood and walked to the center of the arena. She brought her blade with her, still wrapped in cloth. "Show them," Instructor Vel said. Unwrapped the blade and held it out. In the silence, everyone could see it clearly. A simple thing, White bone, slightly yellow from heat treatment, a wrapped handle, a sharp edge. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, just a piece of dead animal shaped by human hands. Instructor Vel took the blade carefully. She held it up to the light, turning it slowly. "Do you know why this blade won?" she asked the students. No one answered. She pointed to the edge. "Look at this. See how thin it is. See how it curves slightly inward. This is not random. This shape is designed to concentrate force at a single point. When it strikes, all the energy goes to one tiny spot. That is why it cut through diamond." She turned the blade. "And here at the handle, see how it fits the hand. Not any hand, her hand. She made this blade for herself by herself. Every curve, every angle, every thickness was chosen for a reason. This is not just a weapon. It is an extension of her body." She looked at, "Your blade is beautiful, it is expensive, it is powerful, but did you make it? Or did machines make it while you watched?" Said nothing, his scales grew darker. "The trial is not just about the blade," Instructor Vel continued. "It is about the maker. It is about what you put into your creation. Time, effort, thought, love." She held up the bone blade. "This blade has all of those things. I can feel them when I hold it." She handed the blade back to, "Tell them how you made it." Looked at the crowd of alien faces. They were all watching her, some with respect, some with confusion, some still with disbelief. "I collected bones from my food," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I cleaned them in my bathroom sink. I scraped them with stones I found in the garden. I heated them over a vent in the wall. I sharpened them for hours every night until my hands bled. I rubbed them with animal fat to make them strong." She held up her hands. The calluses were thick and rough. The skin was cracked in places. "On my world, we call this the old way, the hard way. Before my people had metal, before we had fire, before we had anything, we had this. Bone and stone and the will to survive. We have been making weapons like this for 1,000,000 years. 1,000,000 years of practice. 1,000,000 years of knowledge passed from parent to child, grandmother to granddaughter." She looked directly at, "You asked how primitive can beat advanced. The answer is simple. Primitive is not weak. Primitive is tested. Primitive is proven. Your blade is 7 days old. My blade is 1,000,000 years old. Every human who ever lived helped me make it." Had no words. He sat down slowly, his silver sword forgotten in his lap. Instructor Vel spoke again. "There is a reason we include students from in this academy. Many of you wondered why. Some of you complained. You thought humans were beneath you. Too simple, too primitive, too young as a species to deserve a place here." Her eyes turned deep red, warning. "You were wrong. Do not create weak species. They create survivors. They create problem solvers. They create beings who can take nothing and make something. Humans lived on a world that tried to kill them every single day. The weather tried to kill them. The animals tried to kill them. The diseases tried to kill them. And they survived, not with technology given to them. With technology, they invented themselves piece by piece over millions of years." She gestured at the arena. The targets still showed the marks from every blade, but the deepest marks, the cleanest cuts, came from the bone blade. She said, "If I took away your forge, your machines, your fancy materials, could you make a blade?" Silence. That is the lesson. That is why she won. The hall was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly someone started to clap, then another person, then another. Soon the whole hall was clapping, even the students who had mocked just hours ago. Did not clap, but he did not mock either. He just sat there, staring at his silver sword like he was seeing it for the first time. After the ceremony, Tal found outside the hall. "You won," Tal said, smiling. "Yes," said. "How does it feel?" Thought about the question. She thought about her grandmother who had died 3 years ago. She thought about Earth, so far away. She thought about all the humans who had ever lived and died, surviving against impossible odds. "It feels normal," she said. On my world, this is just what we do. We survive, we adapt, we make what we need from what we have. Tal laughed softly. Your world sounds terrifying. It is, said, but it is also beautiful, and it is home. She looked up at the sky. The 3 moons were rising again. Somewhere beyond them, past countless stars, was a small blue planet where humans still lived, still fought, still survived. I miss it sometimes, she said quietly. Tal put a hand on her shoulder. Maybe one day you will go back. Maybe, said, but first I have more to learn here, more to prove, more to show them what humans can do. She looked down at the bone blade in her hands. It was just a simple thing, bone and cloth and animal fat, but it had beaten the best weapons in the galaxy. It had proven that primitive did not mean weak. It had shown everyone what a girl from a could do with nothing but her hands and her will. She wrapped the blade carefully and put it away. Tomorrow there would be new challenges, new tests, new aliens who would look at her and see only a primitive human from a dangerous planet. Let them look, thought. Let them underestimate, let them laugh. She would show them, she would always show them. Because that was what humans did. That was what they had always done. They survived.